Or this man a stiff one. It is finally his time. It has now been 21 years since they first ushered all the kids out of the pool and made them gather around to witness the metastasization of some of the greatest adult entertainment of all time, Adult Swim. It's 21 years old. It deserves a drink. They've suffered enough. They're finally 21. Finally an adult in its country of origin. They're so proud. So proud. As an entity that has always given unorthodox ideas and styles of comedy a platform to thrive, it has tangled with quite a few pilot pitches in the day, yes sirree, Bob. You can track the development of the block philosophically just by looking at which ideas held their interest. Some weird, some conventional, some a mix of the two. It all contributes to the great tapestry of Adult Swim content. I decided to look at the live-action ones too, no shade, no foul. They make up just as much of the history as the animated ones. Just a few stipulations before we swan dive into the deep end. First of all, no spin-offs or specials heavily related to pre-existing Adult Swim content. There's a few curveballs in there, obviously. Each idea, each pilot is related to somebody else who is somehow related to Adult Swim. But take heed, there's no space catast to be found here. It has to be a concept that has stayed a failed pilot. Any pickup anywhere else was automatic disqualification. There's a few that may have been omitted due to a lack of footage, or a few that end up being one-off specials that I thought were pilots. I tried my best. I combed through the archives. I've split these into 3 rough periods of time categorized mainly by style and intrigue. They tend to fit together, but there are a few curveballs in there. This is the night of 1 million pilot. Huh? Well, how many are there then? Really? That doesn't seem like it. I mean, they had 1,000. Really? Huh. Okay. The night of 30 pilots. See, it doesn't sound as cool. It's the roughest, toughest, rootin' tootin'est Western cartoon of the time, which was not saying much because we need more Western cartoons in general. This art style is probably channeling a bit of home movies, just a little bit, but it was not actually animated by the same studio. A few of these were actually handled by Flickr Lab, a smaller studio in New York City that mainly handles commercials and shorts and stuff. Aesthetically, their work on some of these earlier shorts does match Soup to Nuts to a T, though they would obviously lack a lot more of the stabilized look that would come about later on in their lifespan. I can tell that the tone of this one is a bit more flexible than you'd imagine. The cast is pretty solid. I'm glad to see Mitch Hedberg thrown in there. It's pretty funny. It has good comedic timing and an inherently interesting premise. Even if this one wasn't meant to be a hardcore attempt at a Western, it probably would have been a welcome addition. It's boring Jewish home movies. That's it. No. I'm not gonna leave you high and dry like that, but I do struggle to give this one props. Apparently, this idea was created by a former sound engineer on home movies, which, yeah, I can see that. According to records, this came out in 2003, so obviously it had gone on for a while, but home movies wasn't done yet. Because this just reeks as a weaker version of that. I can tell that this is supposed to be of some autobiographical significance. Maybe it's loosely based off the creator's life, maybe not. Who cares? There is an actual story buried underneath all of your 6,000 worst jokes of this genre. I don't mind the jokes themselves. I mean, you can joke about whatever. It's just, it's so dated. Even for the time it came out, this shit is... It's 2000 late. Hey, dude, you know what? I'm feeling charitable. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, The reason why we were allowed to follow Brendan dicking around town filming random shit is because this kid had nothing going on in his life up until like the end of season 1, early season 2. There was no intrigue, no scandal to his life. He's just some random kid filming shit. Your protagonist has already been set up with something interesting. He's going into rabbi school. He wants to be a rock star. All right, do more of that. Everything here that is not related to trying to breathe life into this character is a waste. It doesn't mean anything. There's a way to balance a pilot like this. There's plenty of them. But this wasn't it. This is... No. Nah. I don't know if I'm really getting full Tony Robbins vibes off of this dog, but had it been picked up, I could see this making for a cozy little set of shorts. The theme song and the actual content of the cartoon are offering two parallel experiences, two different styles of dog. The way that he's presented, at least it keeps you on your toes. I didn't expect the last 2 minutes to spiral the way it did, but it made me laugh. A little sensible chuckle. Jack Black actually turned out to be a pretty smart casting choice, but I wouldn't say this is a role that he starred in. It's alright. Nothing too special. This really is the creme de la creme of Adult Swim pilots. Structurally, conceptually, personally, it is top dog. There is nothing beating it out, and if it wasn't so expensive to produce at the time, it would have definitely kicked ass. Being originally christened as a series of comic books in 1995, this one came with action replay already enabled, but that does not make it a bad thing. The dynamic between the main four characters likely would have been softened if those involved weren't already very sure of what this should be. For something like this, you really need to feel the dickishness radiate off this crew. It's a really strong pilot visually, with particularly striking character design and decent composition. I'm sure a good chunk of you have already seen that sequence during the nerd off, which is substantial. It's good crack, but the general visual identity here is something to appreciate. More so with this era of shows, they tend to work to their benefit, but here, I think it would have been weird if they tried to wrap everything up in a nice little bow. It's wild how perfect Eltingville would have been for Adult Swim, because I can't really see it existing unadulterated in any other period of time. It is one of the most timeless period pieces I have ever seen. Now, I am letting this one go despite my rule set from earlier. This one was actually conceived as a pilot for the What a Cartoon show initially, before receiving an additional pilot tailored for Adult Swim a year or two after. Though it did not originally start off as an Adult Swim original, the demographic ambiguity did compel me to take a look at it. Technically, most of the early stuff was a product of Cartoon Network Studios anyway, so, you know. A more grounded yet satirical superhero serial probably would have been cool if Space Ghost and Harvey Birdman weren't set to cannibalize any attempt of it on the spot. Yeah, as far as movement design goes, it's certainly better constructed, but its subject matter, it's a bit bland. The old superhero spoof has been done to death at this point, but I think it's a bit too low-key for its own good. Of all the pilots that remained, it is by far one of the most straightforward, and while it seems to be a mismatch for both sides of the aisle, it wouldn't have fared well outside of the early years. One of the most famous old pilots of yore in their arsenal, and it's not even really American. The creator of this one is actually one of the biggest and baddest prolific animators from the National Film Board of Canada. We've definitely talked about her work on this channel. If you know, you know, but if you don't, the animal motif is pretty common. Penguins alone are a pretty strong running theme in her work, and her specific style can be spotted a mile away. I think conceptually her stories tend to be the strongest that the organization's ever had, and this short is no exception to that. Out of this list, it seems like one of the strongest from a storytelling standpoint, and it is comedic to a degree, but it really is a tight, dramatic story about a woman getting caught up in the wrong shit. It's really compelling, grounded crime thriller that probably could have only really worked in the early days. Despite that, and I apologize in advance. I can see how this probably lost that male 18 to 34 demographic. It's interpersonal in a way that I think would probably not be seen as super stimulating or anything. There's not much praise I can heap onto it that hasn't already been said. Before J.J. Villard, this was the grimiest, goriest, greasiest piece of animation they could muster about a hero without much of a cause. It stands out even because 15 years later, it's still giving us something that hasn't really been seen much at this point. The fact that this hasn't won an Emmy of some sort continues to shock and appall me to this very day. This one has got to be my personal favorite. I am definitely not biased at all because I already love these two dudes and their general creative tapestry. I'm not biased at all, I promise. Pinky swear, cross my heart, swear to die. It's clear that these two characters are well sick of each other. We don't know how long they've been lost at sea, but we know a fair amount of them just based on how they argue, how they banter. I don't know, I just really like the look of it. I like the way that the 2D was integrated. Hybridized takes didn't really become standard until later, but even then, as a lower budget affair, this one looks pretty good. It's just a gentle little look into the life of Space Ghost's primary voice actor in the age of Coast to Coast. Paints a pretty decent picture of who he is based off of what I could already gather. I think he fits the ethos of Atlanta pretty well. This feels more like a one-off special. I don't really know how this would fare in a long form, but it's cool that there was some credence given to the guys behind the scenes so early on. It's nice. I don't even know where to start with this one. I feel like this is supposed to be a parody of some sort, but it's kind of not. I don't think I get what they were going for here. I mean, I can't even say it looks decent. It's lit like it's a cheap sitcom. What's going on here? Why are we here? What? Stiff was basically meant to be a parody of those Saturday afternoon action comedies that aired on various networks, but the creators mistook imitation for parody and simply made their own particularly bad Saturday afternoon action comedy. And it wasn't bad in any kind of fun or interesting way. It was just boring. Yeah, I guess that sums it up. Shit. Now this one was pretty much packaged from the jump to be a full-blown Adult Swim series. I can feel it in my bones. It certainly meanders like it's an Aqua Teen spinoff or something, but I did check. It's totally original. Next to Perfect Hair Forever and Squidbillies, it probably could have been a classic. It was alluded to in this random bump that I found that its visual similarities to that one Katy Perry music video killed its chances to make it to series. At least that's what I think they were saying. Personally, I wasn't super into it, but I do like how ugly it was. The unrefined 3D mixed with this overdose of bubblegum pop bullshit is a good touch. Loading this pilot in particular with all the rappers was also a pretty smart choice. There is probably a timeline in the known universe where this one went on to receive 6 seasons in a movie, and I would like to see that. I do wonder what would have happened if this had gone just a little bit farther. I could see her becoming sort of like an Uncle Grandpa type figure, you know, she's just going around the world ruining people's lives. It probably could have been funny. The general idea is all well and good. I think it probably would have been a decent fit. It's just the way they chose to execute this origin story is kind of roundabout. Like, I don't mind the way they wanted to walk through the origins of this character and everything, but it kind of just stops. It's a little too disjointed. This is probably gonna sound stupid, but it is kind of a downer. It's not very funny. Like, the whole scene with him retiring is just like, it's like, yo, you didn't give me any way to rebound off of that. It's well shot. I don't think I have much to say outside of that. It just doesn't hit right. This is the wackest anthology series I've ever seen. Cartoon Network's mad, with no soul, no cohesion, no spiritual drip at all. Why the fuck was this so heavy? This is just Things Happen, the animated series. What is this? It is kind of just a lot of noise, but it is an impressive type of noise. It was just lucid enough to keep me interested in it. It's hard not to highlight the editing choices. Even if you come and read the pilot, it's just a whole lot of nothing. In its own fucked up way, it is actually kind of coherent. It has the vibe of a 4 a.m. sketch, but it is more subtly parodic than one would assume. It's just a loose deconstruction of The View. I didn't expect to be drawn in, but I am, and it's kind of a banger. Definitely controlled chaos at its core, but much quieter, which is admirable. I gotta respect that. It's fine. I think it matches the general aesthetic of the time well, but I don't really find myself super attached to it. I think it's fine. For what it was, it probably would have been funnier as a full series. Anything Bob Odenkirk puts out is pretty good. The story of this one stretches far beyond the confines of its pilot. Freestyle Love Supreme started off as a musical improv group Lin-Manuel Miranda created in the ungodly year of 2004. Think something closer to Stomp with rap elements. There's a prominent roster of cast members that performed for roughly 7 years before Adult Swim was involved and picked up the mantle. Pilot went into development in 2011 and was released in some form the following year, but the only time, as far as I can tell, that it has been publicly consumed would have been during one of the now legendary Adult Swim development streams. Presumably because of continued development around entertainment deals for the project and things, this pilot has become pseudo-lost media. Now, I've been trusted with this footage, assuming that it is used sparingly and that it is transformative under fair use and all that jazz. And I am grateful for a chance to look through it and talk about it, even if I didn't realize that it existed before this project. But I would be lying if I didn't say that I wish it were more public, because it's pretty fucking good. It's seemingly at least semi-scripted, but it maintains the spontaneous nature of its premise without losing a sense of what it's presenting. I'm invested in these characters, and I don't even know anything about them. Now, obviously, this man's writing style is a bit more contentious at this point. We are reaching the threshold of full saturation. That said, I still am quite charmed by it. The TV show that actually came out for Freestyle Love Supreme seems to be a series of pro shots. They're just their performances filmed. So this is offering a fundamentally different experience than what you may find with that TV series. And I think it definitely would have worked. I think if it did get picked up, it would have pivoted Adult Swim in a different direction. If not in any dramatic fashion, at least in a noticeable one. Aggressive, drawn together energy over here. Yeah, that explains it. Not as bad as something like Brickleberry, but definitely goes a bit farther than its predecessor. It reminds me of all the bad adult cartoons of the last 10, 15 years. I fuck with it. The art style is crude, the sound design is crude, the dialogue is crude, it's fucking just terrible. I love it. Probably unremarkable in the grand scheme of things, though it could be memorable just in terms of how much of an identity that it Frankensteins from literally everything else. It's interesting that it was Adult Swim that laid down the gauntlet. If anything, this is giving me Comedy Central energy, for obvious reasons. But still, relatively entertaining. If you're not tired of this style of humor yet, then, you know, you'll get a chuckle out of it. Okay, so most resources list this one as a 22-minute pilot, and the synopsis for each certainly doesn't match the likes of what I've been given. I looked around for a bit. I don't think the full thing is out there. What I am in possession of is a segment that comes in under 5 minutes that gives a different plot, but it probably has roughly the same feel. This pilot technically originated from this troop with a YouTube channel. It probably is more of a treat if you enjoy their content. I liked what I saw. I don't think I can... It's hard to judge it accurately. I know it's not the real thing. I don't know. I fuck with the vibe. Probably would have been decent. Didn't like it. No, I can't even pretend to give it props. I don't know. At first I thought it was just an overdose of Tim and Eric, but I think more so it's just... It doesn't go in any definitive direction. It's not extreme enough, and I don't think it's scaled down enough either. A little more extremism would go a long way. I want to see him duke it out with the audience or some shit. Come on, give me something here. Because being so thoroughly stuck in purgatory certainly doesn't help your case. What, you thought you could take Coffin Dodger's spot? Get the fuck out of my... Anyway, 6 out of 10, not too bad. This thing takes place entirely in a nightclub, sort of like a day in the life type beat. It took me a while to really get into it. Up until the gag with the baby, I thought it was just kind of boring. Might have clashed with this point in time. Maybe it came a few years too late, but probably could have been interesting. I don't know what it is about this one. I think I was immediately taken to it within the first 2 minutes. I like that it was filmed on location. It doesn't feel fantastically elaborate, but it doesn't feel cheap either. I fuck with it. I thought it was mercilessly a stupid idea, but it, you know, it's appealing. It's raunchy in a way many strive to hit but don't actually break through. So I respect it, on principle alone. It's alright. I think I like looking at it more than anything else. Its premise is far from new, but other than the art style, it doesn't really distinguish itself beyond that. It feels like an alternate version of Supermansion, but tonally and aesthetically, it's more of a prototype of Bird Girl. I like Bird Girl. Most people don't, and I assume how I feel about bad guys is how everybody else feels about Bird Girl. Sad. Just go watch the other bad guys. It's a really cool premise. Probably a bit dull for traditional Adult Swim, but it would be easy enough to ramp things up in later episodes. I could see some serialization being plugged in if they wanted to. Could have popped off. Conceptually, it could give you a lot of leg room to go in many different directions. I like the feel of it. I like the writing. I like the way it looks. It's just a solid pilot all around. This is what people who don't watch adult cartoons thinks that they are. It's not a bad thing by itself, but it throws a lot at you, but it doesn't give much of a reason for it to stick. I think it's kind of alienating in that way. Like, I don't see this working for them. I think if this were a Fox ADHD project, it probably would have been ramped up a bit. Probably would have had a bit more spice, a bit more extremity to it. But here, being as conventional as it is, structurally speaking, I don't really see much reason to. It took me way too long to realize that this is just supposed to be a spookier, modern retelling of the Three Stooges canon. It's okay. It's giving me Specials vibes, mostly. I think, if anything, it's probably infomercials territory. Not really something that would carry over very easily into long-form content, but as it is, it's pretty cool. This one is probably a runner-up as far as personal favorites go. It's well shot, well acted, well executed. It's firing on all cylinders. I do feel like this fits in pretty well with Adult Swim, but to be honest, the humor is probably a little too vanilla. Like, by the time it came out, there was already these revolutions in how its comedy focus kind of shifted. So if anything, it feels refined, but it also feels a little bland, which is hilarious because conceptually it is comedy gold right here. Now here's the thing, I think this one is mostly a victim of bad timing. Obviously, if you know a little something about J.J. Villard, you know that he's had a few opportunities to make a few pilots, make a few short series, but obviously some of you have already seen J.J. Villard's Fairy Tales, and unfortunately if you have seen an episode of that, you've basically seen Trap Universe. You know, I ain't a hater, I actually think he's a pretty interesting guy. And his work is being funneled through the studio system, so it's obviously not unrefined JJ, you know what I'm saying? Fairy Tales was different, it was interesting, but by the third or fourth episode, I was over it. It's, you know, this is kind of a prototype for that series, so my attention span was pretty much gone within half the time. I think that maybe this would suggest that he's a bit of a one-trick pony. You have the same visual gimmicks, the same movement design choices, things like that. I give him the benefit of a doubt, you know, these are essentially one-shots. I think if this one made it to series instead, he probably would have mixed it up a little. I don't mind looking at it, but I think it'd be rare if I ever chose to watch this one again. You know, say what you want about King Star King, but that shit went all out to sell its premise. It had to be really gross and grungy and disgusting for you to get the point. And I think it sold itself. I think as a concept, I enjoy King Star King more than Trap Universe or Fairy Tales combined. I just got a lot more of its personality. So it's not super bad. It's definitely original. I don't think anything like it has graced Adult Swim's presence, but it, you know, kind of a dud by design. I have no connection to this whatsoever. I tried, I gave it a fair shake. It's functional, you know, the dynamics are easy enough to understand. I just don't really give a shit. I watched it all the way through. Maybe it's too fast-paced, I don't know. It feels like a more contemporary extrapolation of what Aqua Teen is thought to be. I don't know, I mean, it's fine. And that's pretty much it. We blew through all of them. What I found interesting about these is that I found myself actually disliking very, very few of these. Even if I didn't understand what every pilot was going for, they could at least make a positive impression if they had the right vibe. There's very few of these that I would categorically call a miss, a fat L. Even if there aren't as many that could have been seen as titans in their field or anything, they probably would have been relatively well liked if they were picked up. It's a pretty decent track record for a 21-year-old entity. For a brand like this to stick around as long as it has is pretty extraordinary. As uncertain as the scope of entertainment is, Adult Swim has been able to distinguish itself and keep progressing with each passing year. They didn't get here by clinging to singular success, but by embracing the underground influences, moving along with changes present. Even when it wasn't bringing forth new original content, it was terraforming the TV landscape before most of us had even realized. It's an anomaly that it's managed to stay in top form for so long, and hopefully, in another 21 years, it'll be in the same spot. Actually, you know, if it can make it through the next year intact, I think I'll be good.